You were raised by silence. Not absence, your parents were present, working, providing, but by emotional silence, by the unspoken understanding that love was demonstrated through endurance rather than expression, through provision rather than presence, through survival of difficulty rather than celebration of connection. You learned to read love in empty refrigerators that became full, in lights that stayed on, in the impossible continuation of family despite everything that threatened it. You did not learn to read love in words, in touch, in the explicit naming of feeling that feeling safety requires. And now, decades later, you face Valentine's Day with the specific terror of translation, required to speak a language you were never taught, to perform intimacy that intimacy's performance feels like betrayal of everything you learned to value. By the end of this video, you will understand why your struggle isn't failure, but inheritance, why your silence contains love that words cannot capture, and how to honor your formation while meeting your partner's need for what you were never given. The architecture of Gen X emotional expression is built on historical contradiction. You came of age as the language of feeling was being invented. Therapy culture, communication workshops, the explicit naming of needs and wounds that your parents would have found bewildering, if not shameful. You learned this language academically, observationally, through media and education and the relationships of others, but you did not learn it natively. Your native tongue is action, presence, the continuation of commitment through difficulty that difficulty's naming would feel like complaint. When Valentine's Day demands verbal expression, romantic gesture, the explicit articulation of feeling, you face the specific exhaustion of translation, required to operate in second language while first language remains more comfortable, more true, more yours. What this struggle costs isn't visible to others because your love is real. You show up, you stay, you provide, you endure. These demonstrations are love's grammar for you, sufficient and meaningful and complete. But your partner, perhaps younger, perhaps differently formed, perhaps simply hungry for what they were taught to need, experiences your silence as absence, your action as mechanical, your endurance as obligation rather than devotion. They want the words. They want the gesture that gestures, the explicit naming that naming provides, and your failure to provide these feels like failure of love when it is actually failure of translation, inadequacy of language rather than inadequacy of heart. Consider what your parents gave you, not what they withheld, though they withheld, but what they offered, the model of love as work, as sacrifice, as continuation despite cost. This model is not wrong. It is incomplete, as all models are, as your model will be for your own children if you have them. The work of your generation is integration, taking what was valuable in your formation and adding what was missing, preserving strength while developing capacity that strength's cost prevented. What you can do this Valentine's Day, not fluent performance in language that isn't yours, but honest acknowledgement of translation's difficulty. I was not taught to say this. I am learning. What I can offer is presence, persistence, the love that my parents gave me, which was real, but silent. I want to learn your language. I need your patience as I learn. This statement exposes what silence hides, not absence of feeling, but presence of feeling. The different formation requires different expression. The risk is enormous. Your partner might hear this as excuse, as refusal to grow, as defense of limitation, that limitation's defense prevents intimacy. But they might also hear what is true, that your struggle is real, that your love is present, that your willingness to translate is itself the gesture that gesture requires. Your silence isn't emptiness. It is fullness that different vocabulary cannot capture. The work is not abandoning your native tongue, but becoming bilingual, maintaining capacity for love's demonstration through action while developing capacity for love's demonstration through word. This development is possible. It requires what your parents didn't have, the recognition that expression matters, that naming transforms, that love's explicit articulation is not weakness, but courage. Tonight, you face choice that feels like no choice, perform inadequately in language that isn't yours, or refuse performance and disappoint through silence. But there is third path. Perform honestly in your own language while committing to learn theirs, offering what you have while acknowledging what you lack, making your struggle visible as invitation to mutual growth rather than hiding it as shameful deficiency. What your partner needs to understand, what this video attempts to communicate, is that your struggle indicates not lack of love, but presence of love in form that requires recognition. Your silence is not absence, it is love that different grammar expresses. The translation is possible. The love is real. The work is mutual.